This is Echoes of Home, Book 1, Looking for Work. Entry number 63 by Steve the Hammer. We have a workshop. It's got lights and windows and walls and some shelves and a big flat workbench in the middle. It's got a door with a lock. It'll have cabinets and drawers as soon as we make them. It'll have a heater when it gets cold, as I understand Oklahoma is wont to do. What it doesn't have is something a real Aorsian workshop has, which is a thing that tracks projects. Someone in the free company, also known as a guild, would use the thing to start the project, and the thing would then track everything needed to build it. People would be told by the thing to supply such and such a material based on their class and skill. When it was all done, the project starter would assemble it into whatever was being built, such as an airship or a submersible or a house part. We don't have a thing. I don't know how to make a thing or where to get one. Not going to worry too much about it since it's just the two of us anyway, and time I spend worrying about how to make a thing is time I could spend making stuff without a thing. Priorities. So the workshop is a source of coincidental magic. We make stuff, we have a place to make stuff, so it's reasonable we're making stuff in the workshop. Plus, we're not exploding stuff in the Hartman kitchen, and there's a greatly reduced chance of someone walking in on us while we're manipulating ether. But to reinforce the coincidence, I should leave some tools lying around. Tsu'na borrowed a bar stool and wrote a recipe for it. Such a simple thing as sitting down while we work, and I didn't think of it. I love her clarity of vision. I made tables, one for the bit, and one to be a drafting table of sorts. Even if we don't have a thing, we need to keep track of everything we need for our project. We did our crafting. The sun went down. We stood at the door before heading to the diner, looking over the room. We slipped our arms around each other and just held each other. Not sure what she was thinking, but I was just amazed at the idea we were establishing something we could call home. I didn't want to let her go. It was just contentment, nothing more. At least that's how it started out. I will make curtains for the windows, husband. Thank you, my love. Deputy Frank wasn't at the diner last night, to the noticeable relief of everyone there. The man is a stealth tension. We'd gotten used to his presence, but really felt his absence. Pies were sold, music was loud, and a good time was had by all. Gotta wonder if anyone hires him for parties so they can make him leave to liven things up. This morning, we looked at martial arts studios in Tulsa. I suspected what we were looking for didn't advertise that much, certainly not with cheery websites talking about family plans. But we had to start somewhere, so we got on the eastbound bus to check out Flying Tigers Academy. Not to be confused with the Flying Tigers of World War II, the Flying Tiger Historical Society, Flying Tiger Enterprises, or Flying Tiger Copenhagen. Well, maybe Flying Tiger Copenhagen, which features cute products, and one room of the Academy was more pastel than I expect in a dojo. Late morning on a weekday wasn't a likely time for crowds, so we found one guy, at least dressed in a gi, wiping down a mirrored wall. He saw us in the mirror and came over to greet us. Hey folks, welcome to Flying Tigers. I'm Master Shen. Looking to get into shape? Master Shen looked like a young Tony Danza. I could have asked him on the street in Newark and thought he was part of the atmosphere. But he wasn't that out of place in a martial arts academy that offered family coupons on its website. I offered my hand. Hey, I'm Sal. This is my wife, Tanya. Actually, we're looking for kind of specialized training. Specialized how? Well, we had some hand-to-hand in the service, but that was mostly meant to be used in the field. We were hoping to learn more grapple-oriented stuff. Judo, jujitsu, hapkido, that sort of thing. Huh. Well, we do a bunch of different styles here, kind of hybrid, but I bet we can work something out. He tossed the cleaning supplies in a corner. Why don't you show me what you got? I visibly hesitated. Actually, do you think we could demonstrate on a bag or something? Maybe a bob? No, it's fine. Just kick off your shoes. I promise I'll go easy on you. Really, I think we'd be more comfortable using a bag. I could tell he was used to controlling the situation. He probably got his share of willful, overconfident kids, but on the other hand, the customer is always right. Sure, that's what you want. I've got a bob in the back. As we followed him through the doorway, Tsu'na asked, "What is a bob?" It stands for body opponent bag. It's like a striking dummy that moves when you hit it. She nodded thoughtfully and studied the bob when she entered the room. It was an off-pink torso with a bald head, mounted at man height on a base with a rock-bladed rocker bottom. She walked up to it, ran her fingers over the vinyl skin, gave it an experimental push to see the motion, and looked questioning at me. I nodded. Give it a full rotation. Master Shen folded his arms and waited to not be impressed. Tsu'na took a breath, let it out, raised her fists, and entered the dancing Opo stance a pugilist learns on her first day. Bam, 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 bam! Boot shine. A quick 1-2, 1-2 delivered to the bob's chest with a shift to raptor stance. Bam, bam! True strike. A follow through. Moving to coral stance. Bam! Snap punch to complete the combo. Back to Opo Opo. She learned the pattern of the bob's rebound, matching the timing of her punches to add the bob's momentum to the impact force. She worked through her rotation, mixing in twin snakes to increase her damage and demolish to cause damage over time. After a few rotations, the surface vinyl tore. The bob started to make splintering noises. She wasn't showing particular effort or the fierceness she often displayed in a real fight. If she had been, she might have put her fist through the bob. I said, "That'll do, my love." She nodded and stepped back. You could see she wasn't even breathing hard. Master Shen stared at the bob. He approached it, touching the shredded skin and poking at the cracked plastic revealed beneath. I walked up to him and quietly said, "We're looking for techniques where we don't have to kill people, you see." He tore his eyes away from the bob to look at me. Something in his face made him look smaller than he did before. He pointed at the bob. How'd she do that? In response, I punched the bob myself. No combo, no pugilist move, just all of my strength into my shoulder and arm going into one punch in the cracked plastic. There was a louder crack and some of the plastic gave way. Master Shen looked through the hole and back at me. I said, "We're just that good." Okay, look, I teach kids, okay? Little kids. Families. I do after school programs. I get the occasional troubled teen who gets sent here to work out his issues on other kids. I can't. His eyes drifted back to the bob. I can't help you, okay? I can't. I nodded. I understand. Do you know someone who can? He took a slow breath. There's a guy I've heard about. Runs kind of a club. He's over on the northwest side of town. Name, number, address? Bar. Place called Murray's. Ask for the hammer. The hammer? Seriously? He shrugged. The hammer. Okay. Sorry about the bob. We're bringing a new one this week, okay? He just seemed happy to see us leave. As we headed out, Tsu'na asked, "Where does one buy a bob?" Sporting goods stores, maybe Walmart. It looks useful. Perhaps we can make one? Plastic, my love. She nodded. A lot of plastic. A lot of corn. We got on our bikes and rode across the city. The area looked rougher the farther we went. Even the nail salons gave way before we got to where Google said Murray's was. It was an old neighborhood that had been nibbled away by encroaching warehouses and industry, but there was still a bar sandwiched between a pawn shop and an off-brand church. I'd seen places like this in the past. They were usually a sign that I'd taken a wrong turn. The interior of Murray's reinforced this notion. The pit was a kind of functional old that still looked like people came to it not expecting to be killed. Murray's gave me more of a biker bar vibe, despite the lack of motorcycles out front or big guys with beards and leather jackets inside. It was pretty empty, in fact, with just the bartender and 3 guys at a table. We took stools at the bar. The bartender was a pear-shaped balding guy with nothing resembling Sam's welcoming smile. Help you? Hope so. We're looking for the hammer? He squinted at me. Looking to get hammered? We got whiskey. Nah, it's okay. Just whatever's on tap. He looked at Tsu'na, who said, I would like Coke, please. He nodded, eyeing us a moment before wandering down the bar. As he got out of earshot, Tsu'na murmured, I think the coffer and coffin was friendlier than this. I nodded. All the hostility of the missing member without the cute pirate girls. You like pirate girls, husband? Why don't you wear an eye patch sometime and find out? The bartender returned with our glasses and headed away again. Tsu'na tasted her drink and scowled. This is not Coke. I took a sip. Pepsi, same family of drink. I asked for Coke. Why did he give me this? Most places have one or the other. Lots of people apparently can't tell the difference, so they serve whatever they have. That does not make sense. This tastes nothing like Coke. How is your beer? Better than your Pepsi. I heard the guys get up from the table. One with a cheesy mustache over a grin clapped a hand on my shoulder. Hey there. Heard you folks were looking for something? Yeah, a guy sent us here. We're looking for the hammer. Well, I can certainly help with that. Why don't we step into my office out back and talk it over? He led the way to a door at the back of the bar, which opened onto an alley. We stepped through with his friends behind us. He shut the door and turned to me with a smile, whereupon one of his friends got his arm around my neck from behind. Mustache drove his fist into my gut. Got your hammer right here, buddy. The punch didn't hurt. I was more worried about the chokehold. Mustache was probably expecting me to go limp. He didn't expect me to grab his wrist with my left hand before he could pull away. My right hand went to the wrist at my neck. The third guy had grabbed Tsu'na's arm. She stood there calmly, waiting for a lead to follow. Mustache yanked at his arm. Let go, fucker! I didn't let go. I held his eyes as I pulled down Choker's wrist. He had his arm braced with his other hand, but that wasn't enough to keep me from slowly pulling his arm down. He lost his grip on his arm, and then he was pinned against my back from me holding his wrist. I wondered if this was some sort of audition or screening process for the club. I'd heard of a group called the Guardian Angel Safety Patrol who interviewed applicants by attacking them to see how they handled themselves in a tight spot. Mustache clarified that misconception for me. Got the shit, asshole. Give me your wallet or your woman gets hurt. Tsu'na looked politely interested. I sighed. So, this is just a robbery? The fuck do you... I squeezed and twisted both wrists. I felt joints shift and bones grind together. Both men yelled. Tsu'na took that as her lead, grabbed the shirt of her guy, and flung him to the pavement onto his shoulder. I wasn't sure if I heard something crack or pop. I heard movement in the building. I released both men, shifted to machinist, and met the bartender with my pistol to his face as he came out the door with a shotgun. He froze, staring at the muzzle. Put it down, I said. Now. He bent down slowly, rested the gun on the ground, briefly contemplated trying something, and straightened up empty-handed. He attempted to open discussion with introductions. Who the hell are you? That doesn't matter. Look, We came here looking for a fight club. Fight club? All four men were staring at me. The mustache and choker were doubled over, clutching their arms. Possibly dislocated shoulder guy was trying to sit up. Yeah, fight club. Some guy sent us over here, told us to ask for the hammer. That doesn't mean anything to you? We thought you were looking for drugs. Tuna covered her mouth with a hand and turned away. Glad she was getting a giggle out of this. I lowered the gun an inch. Okay, we all had a misunderstanding. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to walk away, and none of us have to see each other again. Okay? No one objected to that idea, though Shoulder squinted up at Tuna. Hey, he managed through the pain. Aren't you Cat's Meow? Tuna and I exchanged glances. Fame was catching up to us. We left without another word, Tuna taking the lead while I kept the guys covered, and returned to Wyatt as soon as we got around the corner. Between the time on the bus, the time on the bikes, and the time wasted at the two locations, we'd pretty much blown the whole day. So we showered at the house and settled it at the diner. We speculated on what had happened. Had Master Shen just made up the bit about the hammer and sent us to the most dangerous bar he knew? Had he actually heard a rumor about a fight club there and sent us in good faith? Or did he maybe have a code word set up with the bartender to roll anyone who came in asking for the hammer? All we know at this point is that we're definitely going back to Flying Tigers for another talk with Master Shen. And when we do, we just might break more than his bob. Checking on statuses here and there. Entry number 6. Tongue's tying up. I always had a bit of a speech impediment with the X sound ever since a kid, which makes pronouncing 6 hard on occasion. Entry number 64 by Tsu'na. Inspection. Husband and I have gone through a lot of maple making furniture, and furnishings in the workshop, so he went out to gather more. I spent the morning working out the chocolate cream pie recipe and making enough to take to the diner in the evening. It is one less project on the list, though husband and I talked about a cherry pie too. So at least the list has not grown. The list also includes plastic. Husband thinks this will be needed for future projects. Since it will also come from corn oil, we should perhaps go back to Leon's shell so that the workshop does not smell of corn oil forever. I thought I would smell of corn oil forever while we were making the cornoline, and we still needed to make enough for Leon's truck. I went to the workshop to look at husband's bicycle project write-up. I do not quite understand why he is so insistent on doing it on what he calls a drafting table. Perhaps the drawings need to be done on paper, but the list of materials and parts could be kept in an online doc that I can look at anywhere. He has talked about not limiting my thinking with preconceived notions, but I think he is thinking too hard about how we did things in Eorzea. I would have loved having shareable docs in Eorzea, perhaps even sheets. When I got near the workshop, I could see Deputy Frank trying to enter it. I saw him trying to turn the knob, then peering in the window. I switched to Ninja and Stealth and followed him from the workshop into the pit. He went to the bar to talk to Sam. Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels. Still Sam, Frank. Want a beer? I'm on duty. I understand you let the Hurcats use your shed? Yeah, they set it up as a workshop. They build furniture and stuff. A couple of the tables in here are theirs. Are you aware of them storing any hazardous materials in the shed? Like what? Anything flammable, combustible, toxic? Well, I can't say I've done an inspection, no. As far as I know, they don't got anything like that. Mind if I look inside? Sam thought about that for a moment. Got a warrant? I just want to have a look around. Sure. You got a warrant? It's your shed, right? You can show me around in it, unless there's something you don't want me to see. It's my shed, but I'm letting the hyur cats use it. Now, I ain't been a landlord before, but I think that means I can't just let you walk into their space without their permission or a warrant. Guessing that's a no on the warrant? We would appreciate your cooperation with this investigation. We being you and the chip on your shoulder? Hang on a minute. Sam pulled out his phone, dialed, and listened. Hey, Sam, it's Steve. Got Frank here at the pit. He wants to look around in your workshop. That okay with you? Something about an investigation. Hold on. He addressed Deputy Frank. What all are you investigating? I'm not at liberty to share details about. Yeah, okay. Sam turned back to the phone without eye. Sam turned back to the phone while eyeing Deputy Frank. He said something about hazardous materials. No, he ain't got one. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Got it. Okay, later. He pocketed the phone and cleared his throat. Mr. Herecat is willing to comply with your request in the interest of maintaining good community relations, once it's understood this won't be a regular thing, and further requests will require due process and proper authorization by an officer of the court. Further, any and all items damaged or removed during your visit will be signed for by you. I'll be present at all times to observe your activities while on the premises. He said all that? Sure did. Husband likes to use words as weapons, I think. Not as sharp as a sword or precise as an arrow. More like my latex bomb. All right, either way. We all went out to the workshop. Sam used the key we gave him to unlock the door. As Deputy Frank entered, Sam asked, Seriously, what's all this about? Deputy Frank peered around the room. There have been reports of the Hurcats. There have been reports of the Hurcats employing explosives. Explosives? Then? Husband called my link pearl at that point, so I moved away. Husband, Deputy Frank is in the workshop. I heard. Any idea why? He has mentioned explosives. Has Liam reported us, do you think? Nah, he'd be complicit for letting us work there. Besides, that's a different county, so our local sheriff's office wouldn't be involved. I will try to find out then. Love you. Love you too. I switched to Earth Normal and entered the workshop doorway. Hello, Sam. Hey there. You got a visitor. Cabinets and drawers were open. The low-level tools husband had left in them were spread out on the workbench. Deputy Frank was studying the paper on the drafting table. Is there something I can help you find, Deputy? He looked up at me. Ms. Herecat, mind if I ask you some questions? What do you want to know? We have reports of you employing explosives against citizens of Wyatt. Explosives? You allegedly referred to it at the time as a latex bomb? You were joking? I assure you, ma'am, this is very serious. As well as using words like a latex bomb, husband had come up with words about a latex bomb. The latex bomb was not an explosive. It was a plastic bag full of plant rosin. I had it with me when Dewey Brower and his friends attacked us, so I threw it at them. Sam peered at me. Not at the bar, you didn't? No. This was after he left the bar, when they met us on the road with weapons. He sighed softly. Fuck. Deputy Frank took out a notebook. Did you report this incident? We were not hurt. We thought the matter settled. You said it was a bag filled with plant rosin? Tree sap, grass pulp, and linseed oil. It was my attempt to make latex. Why were you carrying a bag of that? I was attempting to make waterproof cloth. I pulled out the umbrella I had made with rubberized burlap. This is one of my projects. The deputy examined the umbrella, running his fingers over the fabric. He opened and closed it. Sam looked at me. You know, these kind of umbrellas are to store for what, 10, 15 bucks? We like to not need to spend money. Deputy Frank handed the umbrella back. And you called the bag of plant rosin a latex bomb? Because it was full of latex, yes. Had it been full of water, I may have called it a water bomb. And who exactly did you throw it at? Dewey Brower and his friends. They were approaching with weapons in apparent hostile intent. Can you identify these friends? I do not know their names. My husband calls them Beta Douche, Gamma Douche, and Delta Douche. Sam snorted. Think I know who you mean. They're the ones from the bar, right? Yes. Deputy Frank said, the citizen reporting the incident claims you assaulted them. Ah, come on, Frank, said Sam. I got a dozen witnesses who say Dewey and his bros jumped to here cats. You gonna believe a guy that starts fights and shoots up my bar over people who make pies and furniture? The deputy steadied his notebook. He did not look happy. Perhaps he did not get what he came there for. Finally, he said, thank you for your cooperation, and left. Sam and I watched him walk out to his police car and drive away. You did not mention the gasoline. Didn't see it in the shed. Would you like us to fill your truck's tank? That'd be swell. Cycling Tic Tacs. Entry number 65 by Steve. Confused and upset here. We were low on maple, so I went out this morning to harvest maple. It was a nice, straightforward, Zen-like activity that required a modicum of concentration and physical effort. After an hour and a half of chopping, I got to the point where I was no longer certain I wanted to hospitalize Master Shen. I still felt he needed talking to, though. We didn't know him. We had no reason to trust him. We shouldn't have been too surprised that directions from a total stranger wouldn't work out as expected. But a betrayal of that sort nevertheless seemed particularly rude, and I believed it would be best if I disabused him of the idea that it was okay. So I was back on the bus to Tulsa when I got a call from Sam saying Deputy Frank wanted to search our workshop. I didn't like the first impression of the man after the last Dewey incident. I didn't like how he'd been haunting us at the diner, and today I started to wonder what bug was up his butt about us that he used the testimony of a known ne'er-do-well as a flimsy excuse to investigate us. This did not improve my mood, though it spread the focus a bit from Master Shen. So by the time I got back to Flying Tigers, while I was still on the edge of seriously pissy, I was willing to hear him out. He didn't have much to say, though. When I got there, he was with a 20-something blonde getting handsy with her as he helped her with some sort of stance. Then he saw me come in and his eyes got wide. For a moment I thought he was going to use her as a shield, but he moved away from her and dropped into a stance of his own. I just stood there with a forced smile that probably didn't reach my eyes. The blonde looked back and forth between us. Tony, what's going on? A little tension bled out of me as I tried not to laugh. He really was a Tony. Yeah, Tony, what's going on? I thought we were friends. He shifted in his stance so it looked like he was trying hard not to run. Just get out of here. I don't want any trouble. I kept smiling and took a step forward. Well, neither did I, Tony. You know, when my wife and I went to that bar you sent us to, we didn't want any trouble. We certainly didn't want to get rolled. I don't know anything about that. Just leave, okay? Can't do that, Tony. I took another step. Not until we talk. Something thwacked me between the shoulder blades. I turned to look at the blonde. She'd found one of those bamboo kendo swords. You know, those aren't supposed to actually. Then something thudded me in my gut. From the way Tony was dancing back, I guessed it had been his foot. He darted in with a fast sequence of punches, which, to be fair, might have hurt someone who didn't have level 80 armor and 40 to 50 times his strength. As it was, all it did was bring him into grabbing range. I got the front of his gi in one hand and lifted. From a foot in the air, he pounded up my arm with his fist while still trying to kick my torso. The blonde kept swatting at me with the sword until I turned, still holding Tony, and snatched it away from her. This your girlfriend, Tony? Does she know you set up perfect strangers to get attacked in dive bars? He was still struggling and still not speaking. I lowered him slightly until his eyes were level with mine and his toes brushed the mat. Why, Tony? Cut the crap and tell me why you sent us to a biker bar. It's not a biker bar. You looked like you wanted to fight. I figured you had a fight there. Second spammer of the evening. Trainer. We wanted a fight trainer. Not guys who take us out back and try to rob us. Well, call the police or something. That's not my fault. I lowered him onto his feet, but I brought his face closer to mine. My voice grew soft. I said, try, Tony. Remember how I said we wanted to learn how not to kill people? That wasn't a good learning experience. He went very still, though I could feel trembling through the gi. I suddenly felt tired. Tony was an idiot, perhaps a dangerous idiot, but he wasn't dangerous to me. I was on the verge of swatting a fly with a wrecking ball. Okay, look, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm not replacing your Bob, but I'm walking out of here. I won't come back. Try not to endanger anyone else, okay? If I somehow hear you did, I might feel motivated to come back after all. Are we clear? He didn't answer. I took that for a yes. I let go of him and nodded to the blonde. Ma'am? Then I turned and walked out. I settled in a Starbucks, got myself a stupidly expensive tea, and browsed on my phone some of the other studios we'd looked at before. Most were still within reasonable walking or bike distance, so once I'd pushed Tony and Flying Tigers at least partially out of my mind, I went to have a look. Most of them weren't all that different. Rising Star Dojo had a weapon rack, some trophies in a case, and people in black key. But what I saw of a session looked very stiff and limited, certainly nothing like the Gladiator Guild in Olda. Nor did Meteor Martial Arts compare to the Pugilist Guild. The other four I visited seemed par with them. Odds are, while they might be fine in tournaments on Earth, none of them would stand a chance in the field with the Neoresian Biokin. All the browsing didn't leave me in the best of moods, and the Deputy Frank incident wasn't helping. I think at the time I thought it was a coincidence that I was back on the northwest side of town, but in retrospect, the order I looked at studios did sort of lead there. Still, the only likely reason I had for going back to Murray's was that I wanted to take my mood out on something, or someone. The bartender remembered me. What happened to not seeing you again? I just came for a beer. You didn't pay for the last one. You're right. How much do I owe you? Bar is closed. Get out. I considered arguing with him, but didn't see the point. We hadn't made the best impression yesterday. I turned to the door just in time to see Mustache coming in. He stared at me in shock before blurting, "The fuck are you doing here?" I met his eyes. Leaving, apparently. "You think so?" His right wrist was bandaged. He reached behind his back with his left hand and pulled out a gun, though it was clearly not his preferred hand. "You think you're just walking out of here after what you did?" I sighed. I switched to Paladin and raised my shield. Might want to get out of my way. "The fuck?" I shield bashed him. He had his pals behind him, but not a wall like Dewey, so he went down on his back with his gun sliding away. Joker and Shoulder looked down at him, then at me. I heard a ka-chack beside me and turned my shield to face the bartender, who had his shotgun out. I said, "Not a good idea." He pulled the trigger. A shotgun blast is a lot more statistical than a handgun round. A single bullet can bounce off something and go in one direction, but a shotgun sends a bunch of pellets, concentrated at the core, which means an increased chance of blowback bouncing off a hard surface right back at the shooter. The bartender screamed, dropped the gun, and clutched at his face. At that point, I could have just walked out. None of them could have stopped me. But I had to admit that the situation was at least partly my fault. What did I think would happen by going back there? And too stupid to live doesn't necessarily mean deserving to die or be disfigured. Shoulder and Choker were about to jump me, but stopped dead when I switched to White Mage. My glamour is more white suit than robe, but the staff is definitely magey. I gave them a brief glare before banging the staff on the floor and casting Cure on the bartender. It was the first time I'd used White Mage on Earth, and certainly the first time I cast Cure on an Earthling, but it worked. He shuddered briefly before slowly lowering his hands from his now unwounded face. He gently tapped on his cheeks and chest, then stared at me. They were all staring at me, including Mustache, half sitting up on the floor. I noticed Joker, too, had a bandaged wrist, and Shoulder was in a sling. Since I was already dressed for it, I cast a cure on each of them in turn. I sighed again and shifted back to Earth normal. Right, bars closed. No one tried to stop me from walking out the door. I picked an alley to duck down and returned. I walked through the pit, my bar, and went inside to ask for a cider. Sam brought a bottle out for me, studying my face. "Long day?" "Someone pulled a gun on me in a bar in Tulsa. Does every dickhead in a bar have a gun?" "This here's Oklahoma. Every dickhead anywhere might have a gun, though they ain't supposed to have them in a bar." "So Dewey's in jail for that?" "Nah, he claims he was drunk, so poor judgment and stuff. Having a gun in a bar is a felony. Having a gun while drunk's a misdemeanor." "You're shitting me." "I shit you not." "You really know your gun law." "I know my bar law." I took the bottle out to the workshop. Tsu'na was there making steel rods for me to use as bike wheel spokes. There was already a set of steel tubes on the design table. I settled on a stool across from her, set down my laptop and bottle, and started typing up the day. She stopped working and watched me. Cat TV. "Husband?" I sighed and told her about my day. "What did you tell me about confused and upset here?" "That we didn't want to be around confused and upset here." "You confused and upset some here today, did you not?" "Yes, my love." "Do healers in this world use magic?" "I have never observed any doing so." "Will your using magic confuse and upset more here?" "Well, the bartender's not wounded, and that bar doesn't have cameras either, so I don't see how anyone would believe them." She nodded thoughtfully and contemplated the rod in her hand. "I am missing bicycle components for you. Perhaps you should concentrate on making your bicycle. It should be constructive and instructive and not confusing or upsetting. Have I mentioned how much I love your clarity of vision? I would not fault you for mentioning it again. It's like tea break. I'm not sure tea is actually doing it for throat and mouth relief. Seltzer might be better, except I might be burping during the read then. Entry number 66 by Tsu'na. Sludge. Turtles all the way down. An expression of the problem of infinite regress. Saying alludes to the mythological idea of a world turtle that supports the flat earth on its back. It suggests that this turtle rests on the back of an even larger turtle, which itself is part of a column of increasingly large turtles that continues indefinitely. Infinite regress. An infinite series of entities governed by a recursive principle that determines how each entity in the series depends on or is produced by its predecessor. Cognitive dissonance. The state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. Platonic ideal. A philosophical theory, concept, or worldview attributed to Plato that the physical world is not as real or true as timeless, absolute, unchangeable ideas. Husband was right about the computer being useful. I could sit with it in the workshop and look at the educational site while he took apart and put back together the first bicycle he bought. The metal rods and the wheels, which he calls spokes, seem to take some study for him, and he is good at discussing things while working with his hands, which I needed from him because there were topics the site did not cover. Husband, yes, my love. I am reading about atomic theory. Cool. Is it making sense to you? I understand what the site says. I understand now what you meant by a periodic table. He smiled as he fiddled with the spoke. But I need to make it fit with what I know. I need to coordinate, reconcile. Yes, reconcile the idea of atoms with ether, because everything here is made of atoms, but we harvest crystallizations of ether. How do atomic things combine with etheric things? What makes you think they're different? Earth things are made of atoms. And what are atoms made of? Protons, neutrons, and electrons. And what are protons, neutrons, and electrons made of? I looked at, I looked at my screen. Fermions and bosons. And what are those made of? Wikipedia calls them elementary particles. They are not made of other things. That may be, but geometry says anytime you have 2 points in space, there's at least 1 point between them. He tapped the sides of his hub with his finger. If it exists in space at all, it must have sides, so there must be a point inside. So what do I find if I crack a fermion open? I do not know. I mean, maybe it's turtles all the way down, but still. Turtles? Husband waved his hand without looking up. Not important. My point is, if you break things down far enough, who's to say you won't find ether? You were saying atoms are made of ether? I'm saying it's possible. But Eorzean things are not made of atoms. How do you know? Because no one ever spoke of it? To us, you mean? Because we really needed to know the molecular structure of the dragon we were fighting. He was peering intently at the hub of the wheel as he twisted a spoke back and forth. My thoughts were not as easy to manipulate. I asked, "Are you saying that if we look closely enough at an apple we harvest, we will see atoms?" Maybe. Maybe that's how ether naturally manifests itself. Or maybe Earth people would see atoms because they expect to see atoms, and ether manifests to meet their expectations. But you do not know. No. He looked up at me and smiled. And neither do you. So you don't know that Earth things aren't made of ether, and therefore you don't know that Earth things can't be etherically manipulated. I have doubts. I know. I warned you about that. But like I said once before, if an observed phenomenon doesn't match science, it's science that has to change. Have you just synthesized anything here that you didn't make? A pillow. I got cotton cloth. Okay, so you know you can manipulate Earth matter just like Eorzean matter. Don't let Earth knowledge tell you what's impossible, only what's possible. Husband has talked about this sort of thing, the difference between ideas and the difficulty keeping both in one's head. He calls it cognitive dissonance, and he was afraid of me feeling it as I learned more about this world. It is strange that I can do something and know that I can do something and yet question my ability to do something based on someone else's words. I would never have doubted what I did in Eorzea, and I am doing the very same things here. So why would I wonder if I am able to do them? I take out an apple from inventory. It is a manifestation of an apple. It has shape, it has scent, it has color, it has flavor. Whether or not it has atoms does not change that it is an apple. It is an apple I harvested from etheric harvest. It is an apple I harvested from an etheric harvesting node. Whether or not it is a manifestation of ether does not change that it is an apple. So, as husband said, whether or not it has atoms does not change that it is an etheric manifestation, or the other way around. People build things using the idea of atoms. Atoms are built into molecules. Molecules are taken apart, and the atoms from them are made into other molecules. If atoms are ether, then people are performing etheric manipulation without even knowing it. Yet I do not think I have been performing atomic manipulation. But, as husband said, I do not know. Husband wants his bicycle project work done, but I need to reconcile atoms and ether. So I am looking at plastic. This world has a lot of plastic, and a lot of things are made from it. Boxes and bottles and bags and blankets, pipes and plates and purses, fabric and filters and fluid containers. And the fluid containers are different, since gasoline can eat some plastic and not other plastic. Plastic can be different in how hard it is, how clear it is, what color it is, how easy it is to bend or roll or fold or break. Plastic windows are hard and clear. Saran wrap is soft and clear. A plastic chair is hard and not clear. Plastic can melt and burn and yet last a long time without rotting. The educational site said that atoms and molecules can go together in large, complicated ways. Iron is made of many iron atoms in a blocky shape. Diamonds are made of many carbon atoms in a different blocky shape. Liquid and gas are made of smaller molecules that are not connected together. What all plastic seems to have in common, according to Wikipedia, is long stringy molecules called polymers. That they are long and that there are many of them makes plastic strong. That they are thin makes plastic flexible. That they are often hydrogen and carbon makes plastic burnable. This helps me understand what I need plastic to be and what I need to look for in the corn oil to make it. I cannot see the molecules in the corn oil, but I can think of what must be there and what form I must need to be in, and therefore what manifestation of ether needs to occur. This is better than working blindly like we did making cornmeal, trying to make something that had the right properties rather than something that was something in particular. Though we did make cornmeal, so ether can be made to be what we want. But perhaps if what we want is simple enough, then making it will be simple too. Husband says science is all about observations, so I am writing about what I do and what I observe. I am starting with one of the recipes that made corn oil sludge. It is like the exploding latex recipe. It is a successful recipe for something we do not know the use of. Perhaps, like the exploding latex, I can find the use. I have made some sludge from that recipe. I am calling it sludge 1. I used that to make a different kind of sludge using an earth shard. I am calling it sludge 1.1. I have made sludge 1.2, sludge 1.3, and sludge 1.4. They are all thicker than sludge 1, but they still are sludge. They are all a thick liquid that I can squeeze through my fingers. I once again smell like corn oil. Things made from sludge 2 are more like water rather than less. Sludge 3.7 was a more sticky sludge than the others. It stretched when I pulled a clump of it apart. Perhaps it contains the polymers I have been looking for. I have been working outside the workshop because of the corn oil smell. Sam came and asked me what I was doing. I told him I was making plastic. He asked me if it was explosive. I told him I did not think so. He told me to call it an art project if anyone asked. Sludge 3.7.4 is stringy. Pulling it apart leaves long strings. Perhaps this contains long stringy molecules. Sludge 3.7.4.5 is stringy and tough. It does not pull apart as easily. Perhaps this contains a lot of stringy molecules. Sludge 3.4.5 Sludge 3.7.4.5.3 is more solid. It stretches a little, but I cannot squeeze it through my fingers. It holds together. It is not completely hard, but it is not totally soft. It is somewhere between gray and brown, but it seems to glow if I hold it up to the sun. It may serve like the rubber we made from latex that we can then make into whatever plastic thing we need. I showed it to husband. He called it platonic plastic. Platonic? Guy named Plato from a few thousand years ago believed there are ideal forms of things that everything that existed on Earth was a reflection of. Like, there'd be a perfect chair that all chairs reflected the chairness of. He squeezed sludge 3.7.4.5.3 in different directions. So maybe this is what all plastic has in common. I was happy to have something to show for the day I had spent crafting and mixing and squeezing. I was happier to go back to the house and wash away the feeling of the things I had made. Perhaps husband knows how to make my computer not smell like corn oil. Another work out the throat thing. "12:09 in my time. Last entry. Entry number 67 by Steve. Cat TV. When I was a kid, or what I remember of when someone else was a kid, I had a tricycle with solid rubber wheels. Growing up, I wondered why cars and bikes didn't have solid wheels rather than messing with inner tubes and valves and pumps and all. I suspect the answer is because it's a major pain in the ass to put a solid rubber tire onto a hub, if it's at all durable. It just doesn't want to stretch enough. Between the two of us, Tsu'na and I managed to pull my solid bike tire in 4 directions far enough to get it onto the rim, but that left it so stretched out of shape it would fall off if we actually tried to ride it. Tsu'na thinks she can goldsmith a valve with time and a few examples, but in the meantime, I'm trying to write a recipe for a wheel that includes rubber so that the tire can be made molded on, which, come to think of it, is probably how the trike wheels are made. The, the pit is pretty quiet now when we're on duty. Arguments start, but nothing too physical happens. Certainly no more gun incidents so far. Sam's happy about that, and the clientele seem content. And it means Tsu'na and I can do whatever we want as long as we're ready to respond if anything does happen. So what we did last night was settle at a table with our laptops making potential travel plans. So far, the best we've been able to do for materials in the more or less immediate area is steel. It's perfectly adequate for weapons and armor when all we need to fight against is commonly available handguns. But still, we could do better. And we might actually need better someday. The problem with that is that higher level materials aren't intuitively found on Earth. When it's something similar or equivalent to an Earth material, we can go to where it's normally found and look for it our way. Otherwise, what we've been trying to do is find geography equivalent to where something was found in Eorzea and hope it's there on Earth. Mithril is the next step up the line from steel. In Eorzea, we found it in a rocky ridge on the southern border of the Sagoli Desert in southern Thailand. Sorry. A large sandy desert with big dunes, giant sandworms, and zombies. Assuming the sandworms and zombies aren't a requirement, we could maybe find comparable geography in White Sands, New Mexico, or Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. Both are roughly a mere 1,000 miles away, doable by bus if we wanted to make another romantic getaway. Of course, I am not aware of the equivalent of mithril on Earth, though perhaps there's some alloy that would be functionally equivalent. But that doesn't mean we can't go look. After all, I was not aware of ether crystals being present on Earth until we started mining them. Cobalt, on the other hand, does exist here. Like in Eorzea, it's alloyed with iron and carbon to make a strong, long-wearing metal, good for armor and tools. In Eorzea, it's found in northern Thailand in a gloomy area called Blue Fog, I think named for the perpetual blue-tinted heavy industry haze. On Earth, it's in Missouri, which I think is much nicer. We could maybe skip mithril and go straight for cobalt. After cobalt comes dark steel, another unknown Earth equivalent. Dark steel is a limited time of day material and go Earth is Central Highlands, which is a craggy permafrost area. Eorzea doesn't have seasons like Earth does, but still, that permafrost area is the result of a calamity, called the Calamity, so it's icy year-round regardless. There's permafrost areas in the Rockies, including Colorado, so we could aim for ski resorts or something. Never mind that we don't ski. Titanium, which is next, does of course exist here. In the US, it's mined in Utah, and in Canada, it's mined in Quebec. In Eorzea, it's found in the old-growth forests of the Dravanian forelands. If geography equivalents are sufficient in this world, that might mean we can look for it in the Keystone Ancient Forest in Sand Springs, which isn't too far down the road. There's more metals past titanium, but they're all unknown Earth equivalent material, such as adamantite. Adamantite is only found at certain times of the Eorzea day in Azaz La, an area of floating rocks covered with ruins of Allegan research facilities, the monsters they created, and the toxic waste they left behind. Googling floating rocks brings up pumice. Googling floating islands talks about concentrations of plants that float freely and even produce soil. Nothing big enough to build a factory on, and certainly nothing floating in the sky. On the other hand, if we're looking for industrial ruins, mutant animals, and toxic waste, Earth has an embarrassment of riches, and we don't even have to go as far as Chernobyl. So that's 3 metals: mithril, titanium, and adamantite that require, at least in our existing recipes, dark steel to serve as an alloy. We can maybe improvise with titanium the way we did with steel, but when the base metal itself is an Earth native, there's only so much improvising we can do. Cobalt should last us a while. If we need to go beyond that, I'll just have to take Tsu'na to the appropriate seeming geography and let her prospect, which, after adamantite, might be Iraq or China. Tsu'na was mildly fascinated to learn about all the different climes in the US alone. It's certainly convenient that I can show her so much variety without needing a passport. ID and transport ID and transport are still works in progress. I was sufficiently enjoying geo wish listing with her that it affected my situational awareness. I should have noticed Deputy Frank approaching before he was standing at our table. Nice laptops. Uh, thanks. Where'd you get them? Tulsa? Which store? I honestly don't remember. They were an impulse buy. We just done some day labor and had the cash to spend. Day labor. Picking corn, yeah. Where at? No idea. Stand at a convenience store, guy comes by with a truck, pays cash, drops us off again. I thought they harvested corn with machines. Guess our machine was broken. So you have no money, and the first money you get, you spend on computers, not food or clothing. We eat at the diner. We make our own clothing. Besides, the internet is really cheap entertainment, and we can look for work online. He nodded, studying me, perhaps trying to see past my congenial smile. I added, "We appreciate the county sheriff's department in taking interest in our welfare. Perhaps I should check the serial numbers on the laptops. Make sure you didn't receive stolen property." Thanks, but I'm comfortable with the legitimacy of the store. But you don't remember what store. It was probably a Best Buy. That's my go-to for electronics. Still, it would be good to be sure. I nodded. No, thank you. You have something to hide? I maintained my smile. I believe the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution says I don't need to answer that question. We gazed at each other across the table, and not in a good way. I asked, "Would you like some corn? They let us take some as a part of our pay, and we have more than we need." He pointed to that. Corn? I turned to my wife. "Tuna, my love, would you please fetch a couple of years from the workshop?" My wife scowled at me. "You want to give this man our food?" "Just a couple of years. Community relations and stuff." She gave Deputy Frank a mildly hostile glance before closing her laptop and heading out the back of the bar. She had a pile of corn in her inventory, but whipping that out in front of the deputy would have been awkward. And it gave us an excuse to switch up the tone a little. "So, what's this all about?" "Just keeping an eye on the local activity." "Does that include searching our workshop?" "As I told your wife, that was because of a citizen complaint." "Are we under investigation for some reason?" "If you were, I wouldn't be able to discuss it with you." I sighed. "My wife and I are willing to cooperate with local law enforcement as long as it's done through proper channels." "Does that include coming down to the station to answer some questions?" "I'm on the clock at the moment. Anything you want to ask me now?" "We'll be in touch if we have any specific inquiries." Tsu'na came back and preferred 2 ears of corn, though not terribly graciously. The deputy didn't seem to know what to do with him. He eventually said, "Thank you, ma'am," accepted the corn and left the bar. As she sat back down beside me, Sam wandered over. "Think you made off with one of your cider empties last week. Any reason to worry?" "No, because my Earth normal gear set includes augmented Crystarian gloves of striking, glamour to be invisible, so I don't leave fingerprints." Can't think of one. Why is he so interested in us? Aren't there more Deweys to chase down? Deweys are a dime a dozen round here. You folks might be the most interesting things in the county. I sighed. Cat TV. Suppose so. Try not to look like a mouse. And that was entry number 67 of Echoes of Home, Book 1.